Kahnawà, this is Wagwego, and welcome to this Year in Review on KTV. Gene Diabo along with Joe Delaronde. Joe, welcome aboard.
Yeah, we haven't done this style of a program for a while, which is, it's too bad because these are kind of enjoyable. And we do this every year. We've done it for the entire 16 years or so that we've been doing KTV, a year-end review program.
2017, every year when we get to this point, we always say, wow, what a busy year it was. But 2017, I think, even topped last year.
Yeah, it was an incredible amount of work that certainly this department had to do. And as a community, lots of things happened. Some of them good, some of them great, some of them tragic, as a matter of fact. And we'll try and make sure we talk about as many things as possible, because people will remember. Everybody has their own perception of what was important, what was big. So we went around our office and kind of tried to gather up as much as we could.
Yeah, we've kind of grouped all of the topics. We got 10 basic topics and then a bunch of things that fell under those topic headings. We'll start with community facelifts, Joe. We got a brand new recycling truck this year and recycle bins, the big 360 bins there. So that's pretty exciting, the automated truck.
Yeah, and when it first happened, I mean, I heard some of the jokes, oh yeah, just like a municipality, blah. But you know what? People like them.
Yeah.
Because, you just keep putting stuff in there and just bring it to the edge of the road.
Yeah.
And they did a nice, KTV did a nice piece where it was explained how it worked, and it rolled out very, very nicely, and it's been very effective.
Yeah, well, I guess you could go back when they first put the curbs in around town. People said, oh, it's because we're becoming a municipality. Now we know why the curbs were there, because we had to put our recycle bins on the curb so the truck would pick it up. Yeah, that was exciting news. Sports Complex also got a lot of renovations this year. They got some great seats.
Oh, yeah. It's I guess it was overdue. The Sports Complex now, how old is it? It was built in 1986 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And so it was overdue for some work, not only inside, but outside as well. They did some work on the parking lot. Internally, though, most of the work was there. $269,000, I think it was, that was paid out from, let's see, I have it here somewhere. Yeah, Canada Economic Development, $269,164 for everything. The Zamboni, snack bar, those things were paid for by the MCK, but the other monies came elsewhere. And like you say, the nice purple seats, and much more comfortable, especially the older people really like having that backrest. And
the cushion.
And everything helps, but it looks great.
Yeah, and they paved the outside as well. So finally some paving in the parking lot. It's not a mud anymore.
Yeah, so it was overdue, and hats off to everybody who kind of worked toward that end to get the funding for it and doing the actual work.
Now, one of the greatest hits of the summer, it came a little bit late in the summer, mind you, but we still got it in there when the sun was shining, and that is, of course, the new splash pad.
That thing turned out to be almost like one of the stories of the year, because immediately it was a big hit. Now, we thought it was going to be something that was useful, but a lot of people have pools and a lot of people go on vacations, but that thing, the moment it opened, was always busy.
Yeah.
And people just loved it. They fell in love with it. I remember we did a KTV piece. You could see the joy in the children. But also, people would just gather there. If you walk by at night, sometimes there weren't any kids actually using it, and there were adults sitting around there.
They placed nice picnic tables out there and made it a nice place to visit. One of the unique things about that whole project was it wasn't just the MCK that said, okay, let's make a splash pad. It was a bunch of people, community members, business people, and local government all getting together to make the whole thing a success, because it's not just a splash pad. There's also a basketball court, lacrosse rebound wall, and what else is there?
And there's even, there's the nice tables around there. They're even building a washroom there.
Yeah.
That'll be ready in the springtime. And the key word here is the community involvement. Because, MCK did some of the coordinating.
Yeah.
More than anything else, that was the role for MCK. But you had the businesses doing what they did and being very successful. And like I said, people just love this.
All right, let's move along. Land issues this year. Lots of land issues. There was a whole campaign that went on for 30 weeks, which culminated in a conference just couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, which was a pretty big success.
It was a huge success. Actually, you know, I don't think they've ever done anything like this in my memory. I've been here for 17 years now, and everybody enjoyed it. The organizers were hoping to get some people there, and they got, about 80 people or so. A lot of them were students from survival school. They sent a couple of the classes.
Grade 11 classes, yeah.
And they participated, and there were other people, from...
Participated and contributed.
Yes, big time. And that's why it was such a success, because people... Cole McCumber, I know he's a friend of ours. He's in and out of this office here, but he did a lot of work. He's quite a good facilitator.
Yeah, he turned out to be
so he brought some nice energy to the room. But once they got involved, they really took it to heart. And we interviewed one of the young participants who just was thrilled to be asked to participate. And that's the thing. Sometimes you got to do a little outreach and get different people. But there were elders, there were just regular working people, younger people, all mixed in there and coming up with ideas for the future of what this community should look like.
You mentioned earlier on some not so nice things that happened this year. One of those was it's on the surface not very not very positive. Legal action had to be taken against our sister community, Kahnawà.
And I'm glad you mentioned this, because I heard a few people saying that, and we'll get to the other story on the membership court case later on. But they said, council, MCK did the right thing by, with its statements in court that this shouldn't have been brought to an outside court, the membership. The issue on the court action is something different when it comes to the Kahnawà claim, because the MCK has been owed money for a long time now from Kahnawà, and one of the issues was there was a claim made by an old lawyer, a former lawyer for Kahnawà, who was owed substantial amounts of money, and so he put a lien on that 120 acres or so where the caretaker's cabin is located. And because that is not reserved land, because that was the land that was purchased and acquired, we were put in a very difficult position in Kahnawà to try and defend our interests so that this lawyer could not acquire that through his lawsuit against Kahnawà. And since we're both owners, there was an unsuccessful attempt to meet with Kahnawà to try and come up with something. The only option left was to take it to court. It's a $1.2 million debt, which is fairly substantial. And hopefully in 2018, this will sort itself out, because that's the last place anybody wants to be, is in court.
Absolutely. Community news. Well, there was a huge fire, Plaza 138, which was, it completely leveled that entire building.
Yeah, and I think that was a tough way to start the year. And it was actually arson. And, for people, I went to the 99 quite often. I liked the restaurant, and it was very popular. There was Sweeties next door who made the greatest ice cream I'd ever tasted, and then it's all gone. But it was a huge blaze. It was they had some footage, some surveillance footage of someone lighting the fire. They had some gas tanks and stuff like that, but they were never able to make any arrests or anything like that. So it's still under investigation. But it really sent shockwaves around the town.
Yeah.
Because, for what it is. It was a big loss, but the fact that it was arson, I think, shook people to the core.
You mentioned sending shockwaves around the town. A vicious dog attack occurred, I believe it was late September?
In September. And, there have been dog attacks and dog bites going on for a long time. It's actually been an issue that comes up and rears its head every once in a while. But finally, the tipping point was when a young boy, about 12 years old, I believe, and he was attacked by a couple of dogs who ran out of a house. One was a pit bull type dog, and the other wasn't. But they both attacked him, and he received severe injuries, and it caused an uproar. And it seemed to be that final straw for a lot of people. There was a community meeting on it. Carl Horn put some suggested legislation in about pit bull type dogs, which is in limbo right now. But the fact is, the the dog bylaw was, I think, a little more strictly enforced. There was a zero tolerance, and you still see some dogs loose, but there are far less of them.
Okay. Moving along, another community where many people from here go to hunt, Listugush, they're having a little bit of an issue with Kahnawà now.
Yeah, and so we had Chief Darcy Gray, who was they just called him the chief
right.
of Listugush. They go by chief and councillors. And he actually came to Kahnawà. He had a meeting in Montreal, but asked to meet with Grand Chief Norton. And they talked about complaints about hunters from Kahnawà who are not respecting the rules over there. So they made a complaint, and they actually created a working group who are going to look at ways to address this. So in the meantime, there is a moratorium on hunters from Kahnawà hunting over in the Mi'kmaq territory. So it's not necessarily a pleasant story, that's for sure, but they did meet and continue to meet. As a matter of fact, at the AFN General Assembly in early December, Grand Chief and Kahnawà Sky Deer, who are the council liaisons who were appointed to that file, did meet with the Listugush people, and so they seem to be moving in a positive direction.
Working it out,
yeah,
hopefully. Okay, moving along, the somber part of the show. I mean, the dog attacks were quite somber in the fire, but in October, that month, Kahnawà was struck with a lot of death and tragedy.
And for the most part, we're talking about younger people, and that was another one where people started to look inward at what were we. Was it something of a different nature? Was it a message to us? There's so many happening at one time. There were meetings. People tried to come to grips with it, and as a matter of fact, a group of women met and have continued to meet to try and find some positive outcomes and some positive movement, and also give people a chance to kind of vent a little bit, because it was very tragic. I mean, you had a car accident, which people, and again, if you want to take a positive out of it, Gene, you had the neighbors who ran out there and pulled people from a burning car and rescued 3 people. Unfortunately, they couldn't get everybody, but they risked their own lives to get in there and pull people out. But it was just a very tragic time, and there was a dark cloud hanging over the community for quite a while.
Yeah, you mentioned also, you want to call them heroes, those people who came out to help. In the dog attack, there was also another gentleman who came to the rescue.
And former star lacrosse player, but he's not a young guy anymore. Ralph Alfred happened to be passing, and he just ran in there with no regard for his own safety.
Yeah, and it's a good thing he was there.
Yeah, and he, I shudder to think what would have happened if he wasn't there.
Kahnawà has its own search and rescue team now. And they were called into action a couple of times this year. Just recently, as a matter of fact, as there were 4 hunters from up north who went missing from another community, not from Kahnawà, and they were called in. The search and rescue team from Kahnawà was called in to help with the search.
And not only once, but twice, because they went up initially and they weren't successful. I mean, unfortunately, all 4 passed away. A boat had flipped in James Bay, and but they were looking and hoping for, and without any luck. But they did actually come home, but then were requested for if they could help a little bit more. So, nice to see communities and different nations at this point working together. But a lot of people have a lot of relationships across Native country, and there are a lot of friends among the Crees and the Mohawks, and that whole search and rescue thing is, I like that they put this together, because exactly for times like that, we have a little bit of expertise that others maybe don't have the opportunity to create.
Yeah, to put together.
Yeah. So.
And they also worked locally on the tragedy that happened off the CPR bridge.
Yeah, which was one of the again the tragic losses that we saw. So. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on with some hope now. And there's a school just down the road in Chattagee called St. Willibroad. A third of the school population come from Kahnawà, and they're also bilingual. It's French and English school, and they put together a song which was to be their anthem, their new school anthem. They wanted to update it, and they came up with a hit.
Did they ever?
Yeah.
I mean, when I first saw it, I was blown away because you figure it's going to be. I remember we had one at Buildings that I can't repeat on the air, but as a school song,
Yeah.
I think what's most impressive is how it caught on, but it's the quality of the song.
Yeah.
And they wrote the lyrics
The
themselves.
kids, there's 10 kids who are featured in it, and they wrote the lyrics, they came up with the song. It was produced by, I can't remember the production company's name, but they're a traveling studio that goes around and does this with kids on First Nations territories. That's not a First Nations territory, but because of the situation with the third of the population being from Kahnawà, they went there, and as soon as the video went out on Facebook, it had 34,000 views within the first hour or two, and I haven't checked recently, but it was up into the hundreds of thousands.
Oh, I mean, when they put it out there, it was retweeted by this one and that one.
Justin
the Prime
Trudeau,
Minister and his wife both retweeted it,
Yeah.
which for them, they were thrilled. But I think the nicest thing, and they came to K103, did it live.
Yeah.
And
Oh, they
kids-
kind of went on tour. They were doing
Yeah.
I think, in Montreal.
And I got
big
to see
events.
them live. They did the song at their Christmas concert, St. Willibron, and
Yeah.
I was there to see it. And to see all of the other kids who are so thrilled to be part of it. Not the 10 singers, but all of the other children were all joining in as well, and you could see the smiles on their face. This brought a lot of pride. And again, the cross-cultural, message is really something for some of the kids in Chattahoochee. They've never been to Kahnawà, and they really liked it because they said, "Well, my friends are from there, but I've never been." And they just—it's been a great experience for everybody.
The song is called Dream Child, and you can catch that on YouTube, Facebook, wherever. Just look it up online. And the special thing about it, which we didn't really mention, is that it's in Mohawk, English, and French.
Yep,
Yeah.
beautiful job.
Excellent. Gaming. All right, let's talk about gaming. The Continent 8 was sold last year for what comes to about $35 million Canadian. What do we do with that money?
And that's the thing. It's actually shared between Diabo and the Mohawk Council of Kahnawà, Diabo Zakta, and they had a working group that was trying to find ways to use the money most efficiently,
Right.
properly, and to build for the future. And about a month or so ago, they made a big announcement on that, and they've created a new type of working group that will invest the money, looking at doubling it, what it is, and being careful with it as well.
Well, yeah.
Leaving room for local investment, local projects, maybe other projects outside, but also keeping some of it so that it maintains. It's like having an annuity at a certain point.
Safe investments that
Exactly.
give you a smaller return, but over a long period of time.
Yeah, so they put a lot of thought into it, and it was nice to see the two organizations work very closely with each other. And it looks like it's a nice nest egg. And as I said in the report that I did when I did a KTV report on it, when you think about the initial investment for Kahnawà, $0,
Yeah.
zero. And that goes back to the old MIT days. MIT was always kind of controversial for people here, but the payoff has been spectacular.
Electronic gaming devices, that's all the talk, like in the last few months.
Yes, and the Mohawk Council was approached by a couple of the local poker houses to allow them to use these devices, which, if you look at
What
it,
are they? They're not the
they're a variation on what used to be the old one-armed bandits, but they're electronic. There's all kinds of information that will be stored on there. You know how much money was spent, what the payoffs are, and there's all kinds of technological advances that make them very efficient. But are they going to happen? Well, the council has met with the proponents, and they're looking at having kind of a test, a testing phase to see if this will work. And in this instance, there will be a nice payoff back to the community. But again, it's really a pilot project at this point. And they did do quite a bit of surveying over this past year. That's one thing about this year we didn't talk about. even when you look at what we talked about earlier, lands, but there were so many surveys that were done just to get a sense of what people were thinking, where they were at. Gaming was one of them, because there was a lot more to gaming than just this issue or that issue. There were many, including the proposed casino from Lee Thompson, and that one is another one that's ongoing and continues to. We'll see.
What part does the MCK play in that whole?
This one is different because there were, as we all know, some projects in the past that were proposed through and by the Mohawk Council of Kahnawà. None of them passed the referendum stage, but they kind of, the last one was very, very close. And so Mr. Thompson and his group proposed that it be a privately held casino this time around. So they were going around doing surveys, and it certainly was big news. For council, it doesn't really have a role per se, but there's obviously a need to have oversight, and if there's going to be a casino and it's going to operate, there have to be agreements between governments, and that's where council, regardless of what happens, would have to take a role. So it's complicated, and 2018 should see lots of things going on.
Okay, we're just about halfway through. Actually, just a little bit more than halfway through. We're going to take a short. And welcome back to this 2017 year in review for KTV. I'm Gene Diabo. Joe Delaronde is joining us as usual. Joe, we were talking about gaming just before we went to the break, and you mentioned that Mohawk Online had a pretty good year.
Yeah, and we recall, of course, regular viewers will recall that there was a bit of controversy, I guess, a few years ago when there was a movement to get into the gaming industry itself, because there was what's it called there, Sports Interaction actually made an offer for MCK to either partner or buy. And it was, MCK decided after a lot of work and research that it was worthwhile to do. And the first year revenue results were actually far better than they thought they were going to be, considering it was, renewed and retooled, and there would be expenses, but they did very well. And so, after the first year, net earnings of $2 million, which comes back to the community, and that's on top of some of the other things that they did, like we mentioned the splash pad.
Yeah,
they were one of the donators, along with the other community organizations, and of course the private business people. So, there have been some notable successes.
So that's a positive, that's for sure. The Trudeau government announced now that Canada will legalize recreational use of marijuana as of July 1st, 2018. Now that sent not just First Nations, but every municipality, province across the country scurrying to try and get things in place to meet the challenge. Kahnawake no different.
Oh, they're scurrying everywhere.
Right.
And the provinces, many of them not happy about this. There are a lot of people who aren't happy about it, but the way the government worked, I guess they did look at the direction that the world is going in. As you see in the States, there's a lot more legalized marijuana. Yeah. It has its pluses. It has its negatives as well. People know for a long time now about the medical use of marijuana, and I think most people support that. The recreational issue, well, that's up for some debate. The problem we have in Kahnawake and elsewhere is that for us, there's been a zero tolerance. But now, when something becomes legal, what do?
Yeah.
And so does the community support, saying, well, you know what, if everybody else is driving on the right side of the road, we better drive on the right side of the road. So there's been lots of consultation. There was a big survey that was done earlier in the year. There will be some legislation that's going to be going through the community decision-making process in terms of regulations, because there was a moratorium on selling.
Right. What was the reason for that?
Well, if you look at Tandanaga, some look at it as a positive, but a lot look at it as very problematic. They kind of went the way of the tobacco industry, which, we had some success here in the tobacco industry, but we also saw where some of the problems were is if people were arrested, there was no mechanism to defend them. We saw some of that just as recently as last week,
Right.
where people who were in the industry got, were arrested. So nobody wants that type of thing to happen in Kahnawà. And if we're going to be part of an industry, then the surveys showed that, then we better do it right. Follow the rules, because there's a safety element here as well, health and safety. And if you look at marijuana going back 30, 40 years ago, the marijuana that people are using today for recreational purposes is apparently 20 to 30.
I'm glad you added that word, apparently.
Well, I'm not exactly a smoker, but I mean, hey, let's face it, a lot of people are. The percentages are probably more using it than not.
Yeah.
So at this point, we know that the drug is getting stronger, and there's safety concerns, especially when you have things like people are adding, fentanyl and things like that, and other ingredients. And so if you have it under control, it's like you don't want to go back to the days of Prohibition where nothing was allowed and bathtub gin was killing people, blinding people. I think the impetus for a lot is to make sure that at least it's safe. If you're going to be using it, get it done properly.
I think that's the way Canada is looking at it, is getting rid of the black market, basically. Yeah. We'll see if that's going to work or not.
Well, I think the real issue is how short a time frame they gave everybody. And First Nations did consult a little bit with Quebec. What do you think? We sent a small delegation to Quebec to give our thoughts, but it's really a short time frame to do a lot, and it's not done yet.
Okie doke. Moving right along, reconciliation. That's another of the Justin Trudeau government promises, and we've seen a lot of positive, and also some. It's right at the same time, while all these great positive things are going on, there was some stuff going against it. Let's start with the positives, though. Banners on the Mercier Bridge, the Jacques Cartier and Champlain Bridges Incorporated approached the MCK, and we put together a contest for local artists to have their artwork featured on the bridge for Canada's 150th birthday.
And it turned out to be a spectacular success. I think, as usual in Kahnawà, there were some concerns about, well, are we celebrating Canada? But the opportunity to have artwork from local artists shown, and with they use the numbers like 80,000 cars passing a day. Maybe not 80,000 are using the Mercier Bridge, but probably 50,000 are. And to get that many views every time you're going over the bridge to see artwork from several local artists is just a huge success. We've talked to the artists. We had one of them working in our office for a while. And it ended up being a feel-good story in a big way, and the artwork is still up there.
And we'll be, I guess, until about a week and a half from now.
Well, we'll see. Maybe they'll just leave it up.
What else? The City of Montreal actually changed their flag to include representation from us.
And isn't that an interesting story? Because when it was first announced, the then Mayor Coderre put it out there, and was working with a team that included, as one of its key members, Chief Christine Zachary-Guillaume. She put a lot of work into this, her heart and soul, basically. She went all in. But when it was first announced, there was a lot of, distrust in the community, saying, well, I'm not too comfortable with this. But when they had that big event on the day when they announced the flag and raised it for the first time, it was also on the anniversary of the United Nations Declaration. They had a big conference in Montreal that turned out to be very, very successful. And when you saw some of the people who thought it was a really great idea to have us recognized, it changed the perception. I think, too, when the flag actually was raised, it was like a wow moment. And what's interesting is, even though I know Christine was very sad that her friend Mayor Coderre lost the election, when they had the motion to change the flag and include Native symbols, the current mayor, who was on an opposition party, actually seconded that motion. Yeah. So we know there's going to be a continuation of that. There were so many little things that were efforts toward reconciliation. and you had also the Truth and Reconciliation issues going on. Some of them didn't go so well because you had people quitting the committee and things like that. But there was a nice event. I remember when they raised that big totem pole on
That's right.
on Sherbrooke Street, and we were there for that, and it was just a beautiful ceremony.
Chief Zachary Diabo also got the key to the city from Mayor Coderre.
That was really something else. I happened to be there for that event as well. It was a lot of nice things, because people would always say, and I agree with them, that, well, the proof's in the pudding. It's nice to say things. Well, to have some of these things have.
There was also the Canada Day parade, in which Constable Delaronde was the marshal, I believe.
Yep, they asked him to be the Grand Marshal, and he walked at the front of the parade. The peacekeepers were well represented.
Yeah, that's John D. Delaronde, by the way.
Yeah, Constable.
Constable. With the reconciliation now, a lot of when government officials start a meeting or are doing a speech, they'll always now recognize the territory on
unceded
territory. It's not just here; it's all across the country. They'll always mention where they are. Here, Mayor Coderre was saying, recognizing this is unceded Mohawk territory, meaning Montreal. A couple of articles came out from a few of the French historians. I mean,
was it Le Devoir or La Presse who did that one? I don't recall, and I should recall it, but I was on vacation at that time.
Yeah.
But when it happened, they had some scholars, historians, and they said that, well, you know what? There's no proof that it was the Mohawks, and it goes back to this long-standing issue of history where. Yeah, and then plus the historians are saying, well, you know what, the Iroquois were here, but those were the Laurentian Iroquois. So where did they go? I mean, we're the Iroquois.
Yeah.
It's a confounding argument that they have, and MCK put a full-page ad, put a lot of work into it, and actually even this past weekend in the Gazette, there was a story about that, and Christine's picture is in there on page 3. It's an ongoing issue, but the politicians positively are saying the right things, that, hey, it's unceded territory. Some of the scholars are trying to make it, throw some seeds of doubt in there.
Well, that brings us to the curriculum that's being taught to Quebec students, Quebecois French students in high school and in universities. And I know that Chief Zachary Diabo is also working on getting those curriculums changed, because the kids are being taught that we're immigrants. They were here first, and then we came later. So those are some of the tough things that have to change.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of work to be. There's a lot of work to be done. As a matter of fact, that's going to go into. I guess some of that's going to go into our next story,
Sure.
And I think we're talking now about
the irony of the reconciliation, which I alluded to earlier on, is while all these positive things were going on, we had the Autoroute 30 court case that went through. The relationship with Quebec is somewhat strained between Kahnawà and Quebec. We were in Quebec City protesting Bill 85 because of the seniority link. Explain all of that.
We'll get a chance to do that. So when you talk about the educational aspect, if you look at the original court case, Nathalie Simon, the then mayor of Chateauguay, led the charge, saying that, you know what, we were here, the farmers were here first. And I remember her op-ed in the Gazette of 3 or 4 years ago, before the court case really came to be, and she's just so convinced, I guess, through their education system, that, well, the Mohawks, you're just interlopers, you know, and the farmers were always there. And to have that fundamental misunderstanding, when all of the evidence shows otherwise, just the fact of the seigneurie claim, which it goes back 300 plus years, I think it's almost 400 at this point, and the farmers came in on the seigneurie, and that's all documented, but I guess she didn't read that because they don't teach that in school. So there's obviously needs for better education in the Quebec schools. Otherwise, all their kids are going to grow up thinking that, well, the Mohawks moved up here from elsewhere 20 years ago, or whatever it is that they think.
On a positive note, well, we lost Mayor Coderre, a friend to Kahnawake in the city of Montreal. She lost the election in Chateauguay, and we have a new mayor there who seems to be a little bit more
conciliatory. Yeah, for sure. And I don't think anybody in Kahnawake will mourn the demise of her party in Chateauguay because they all lost.
Well, tell us about the strained relationship with Quebec.
It's been difficult because you have so many things that are happening. And if you look back a couple of years ago, you had a meeting with the premier saying, look, there's a lot of work to do. We have gaming issues, internet gaming issues that the world seems to recognize, but Quebec doesn't. And so how are we going to find a way to work together, get things recognized? You have the whole Highway 30 issue, which then took a left turn, a wrong turn in terms of they put this bill together called Bill 85, which created an economic development corridor right on Highway 30, passing through Kahnawake, and they neglected to tell us, which caused a real problem. And Grand Chief Norton had just been elected, when all of this happened, and they had to go to Quebec and try and deal with it. And then when they finally had hearings this past summer, we sent a busload of people up there, including just about every council chief went up to let them know that there was a problem with us not being consulted on this, especially since the whole south side of Highway 30, or is that the north side? Yeah, the north side is where we're at, was coming back to Kahnawake. There's some positives there. We'll get to that in a minute. But so that was really problematic. Also, they didn't recognize that the seigneurie had a relationship to Highway 30. Right. And they had no idea about that. And when they went to a meeting with the committee that was dealing with it, there was extreme frustration because they pretended it just didn't happen and they didn't know about it. And maybe they're being truthful and they really don't know about it because they don't want to know about it. That's the conclusion that you can draw from our side, because at every turn there are efforts to inform and meet. So, the government issues are, there's some good things that have happened, but certainly some frustrations. The province is one where things move a little too slowly, I think.
So to get Highway 30 through, agreements were made with Kahnawake, and some of those agreements, or part of those agreements, were that they would return land on the north side of the highway and convert them back to reserve status. 5 parcels, I believe.
Yep.
And they have now, it's almost through, the first parcel coming back to us.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first parcel, which is D, which is the biggest one, which is closest to Chateauguay, coming back this way, it's the largest parcel, and that didn't have any what they call encumbrances on it. There were no hydro lines passing or any other things like that. So that was officially returned a couple of months ago. That had never happened in our history, except for a couple of small pieces of Hydro-Quebec lands that came back, which don't even count because usually it's just the size of this room. Yeah. But a substantial chunk of land there. There are 4 more to be returned. They're all in the process now. And that historically is... that is it's a huge story for 2017. I think a lot of us thought that would never happen in our lifetime, that we get anything back. The seigneury work still goes on, but to see this land coming back, one of the problems though with Quebec is that they tried to forget that there's an extra 200 acres still to be identified. And they said, no, not that we know of, and they had to be reminded in no uncertain terms that, come on, guys, and so, there was then that little recognition. But when you have to battle for things that were already decided on, it becomes very frustrating. But the big news and the happy news is that lands are coming back soon to be, we have to decide what we're going to do. The other parcels A, B, and C are all along from Côte St. Catherine coming back. Some of those have some issues we have to deal with, but they're all coming back. It's really technical issues. And one of the things is there's going to be an entranceway made from Highway 30 to connect just for local use only for emergency purposes to Lot 106. Because as we saw, there was a train accident last week. and the train had to stop. There was a car that was hit. Luckily, the young man wasn't too badly injured. But if you have an accident like that, there's no access. If someone gets sick,
Yeah, the train had to sit there for a couple of hours.
Yes. So if there was someone had a heart attack back there or something, it would have taken a lot longer. So they're looking at a way of coming in from the other side.
Right.
That's been agreed to. There's just some more work to be done to finalize it and get that road through there. But it's going to happen. So there are some good news and some return of land, a pretty big story for this year.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up with another pretty big story, or a bunch of stories, and that all has to do with membership.
And there are years where people say, "Yeah, that's the biggest story," but none of them have been as, I guess, hard hitting as this one, because now it's gone to court, and the court case is done.
No decision yet. But.
No. Juanique Horn-Miller and 16 others took the MCK.
15 others. I think it was 16 others.
16 in all, 15 others. They took the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake to court, and it was a very intense 2 weeks. And what really came of it, we saw it even in the local media, even with their expert witness that they brought in to talk about the adoption and things like that. It was generally agreed that this case had no business going to the Quebec Superior Court, and that it's something that should be decided internally. It's not going to be as simple as that, but I'm glad to have been a witness to much of it and most of it. To see the arguments on both sides was enlightening and eye-opening, and I think 2018 is going to be very interesting. The judge is not going to be making a quick decision. He said he usually makes a quick decision. His name is Judge Davis, and he said in this case, hearing what he heard, he's going to have to spend a lot of time balancing what has to be said, because in a judgment, you need to have some resolution. And the obvious one for the plaintiffs would be, well, then they just allow, like, we win and we can
anybody can live here.
Anybody can live here. And he knows now, and I think everybody knows that that's just not going to work. So how are you going to reconcile some sort of appeasement or agreement or what? And so he's got a lot of thinking to do. And in the meantime, the membership law goes back to the community decision-making process. The amendments are going into second hearing now. And as we speak and record this over the holidays, if you have a chance to look at the new draft, it will be up on Kahnawake.com, KahnawakeMakingDecisions.com. And that draft will now go into the second hearing phase, at which point, once that's done, it could be ready for passage. And then there's the residency law, which is kind of somewhat sounds complicated, but in the end, if residency is removed from membership, it'll actually be easier to administer it later on.
Right. 18 meetings to get to this second hearing, to get the first set of amendments written. It's all written there, and that's what people are going to review over the next 30 days. How much longer do you think it'll take after that?
Well, I hate to use that old term, but I think the heavy lifting is done, because remember, there were the 18 meetings in the first hearing.
Yeah.
But there were also about the same number just to get the mandate to move forward and to get the mandate to have the Council of Elders removed from the law. Because what was complicated, and people don't understand this, a lot of people don't anyway, the complication of the law was that in order to amend the law, it had to go through the Council of Elders. And since that was that became problematic, and they were suspended in a joint decision by the MCK and the Council of Elders, there was no mechanism to change the law. So that had to go through the CDMP and be agreed to. And some of the Council of Elders were part of those meetings, and it took a while to convince them or have them realize that people were doing this for the right reasons and not out of spite. And it took a lot of time. That's why we're here now, and it does take a while. But it's the most complicated law we're ever going to see in Kahnawake. And I don't think we will ever see the end of it. There will always be adjustments as time goes on and people's ideals and stances change
Evolve.
over time and evolve. Who knows where it's going to go? But for the time being, it is moving in a direction where I think it's quite possible that we'd see final passage in 2018.
I know that there'll be a lot of people happy who have been waiting a long time to basically be rubber stamped. But,
Absolutely, and that's the untold story almost, is that there are so many people in that boat who should be members now, and they haven't been able to do things like build a home or something like that. Like they're all ready, they're just waiting for that one final thing. So hopefully people will take that into consideration too when the hearings resume, so that this is not always about keeping people out. It's also about having people being able to live their lives and move on, people getting education and things like that through the community. So going to be an interesting year.
All righty. Well, I think the heavy lifting is all done. My list is exhausted. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close up?
I'm just going to take a quick look here where there are a couple of things that were maybe not so big. Election law. There's going to be an election coming up in 2018, and there are proposed amendments to make it a little more efficient. So we have hearings coming up on that. The one thing we didn't talk about too much was the fact that we're recording this in
building,
in the MCK Public Relations building, so to speak. We're at the old Lafleur office now. Have a whole nice new modern facility. No disrespect to the Dixon House, but it was a house, and it was built a long time ago. The ceilings were like,
I was hitting the ceilings with my head.
So it was a small place, and actually it was demolished because it was just not feasible to to fix it up. So it's now gone, and there's a little extra parking around there. But we're in this nice facility here, so which has been pretty
exciting. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and just one other note here: the fundraising billboard I thought was kind of fun. The youth center.
Yeah.
Because there are several around that were put up, but there's one that at the Services Complex. After a couple of little bugs at the beginning, because
still kind of in the testing phase.
Yeah, and the in the daytime you have to have a very bright sign to cut through the sunlight, but they couldn't figure out how to lower it at night, and for a while there, for a week or so, people were complaining that it was way too bright, and so that's been dealt with. But what's really nice about that is the monies that are raised for this, if they sell ads, and they have been, they go to the youth center.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. And we administer, so we help, arrange things, but it is for the Kahnawà Youth Center. So that was another nice initiative, I think, this year.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have anything else that you think of when you think of this past year.
It wasn't my idea, but we had a show called, what is it? I hosted. What's it called? Teller's Vault. There you go. That was the brainchild of Neil McCumber, though. He came up with the concept. He got money from the Case Populaire Community Development Fund, $5,000. How do we take that money, promote the community vision and values and all that sort of thing? Came up with this show idea where local TV producers or movie makers could come in and pitch their idea, kind of like Dragon's Den or the other one, Shark Tank. And the panel of judges would decide how much money that they were willing to give. You were one of those judges.
Yeah, it was it was a fun show to do. Maybe not so much fun to edit because it's a lot of work, but we got some nice reaction from it. What I think is really nice about it is the cultural component that comes in, because you have all of the pitches had a cultural,
educational, entertainment value.
And that's why you had the 5 judges. And just for clarity, we have to remember, now I know that Cattery, for example, came out really hard, but we were also playing a bit of a role there. So it's not exactly like maybe based on 100% reality how we came out. There was a little show business to it, but the reality was those people did receive the monies.
And those people made their pitch, and they did not know that there was any show business to it. They were in here really trying to get money.
So a couple of them were like, what?
Yeah.
What? But the best one was Bear Lazar with his proposal for the, what was it, the gaming device?
He wanted gaming with Bear. He wanted to do a YouTube, start his own YouTube channel where he just played electronic games and filmed himself doing it.
Yeah.
And he needed money to buy the
and he got shut
games
down.
and
he got shut down. but he was a good sport about it. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. I hope that 2018 is going to be a little calmer, perhaps, because there was a lot of ups and downs and upheavals and tragedies and disasters and things like that. Those things are always going to happen, but hopefully, though, it slows down a little and we see a really good 2018.
Well, we wish you and your family all the best. We wish everyone out there and all of your families all of the best for a safe and happy holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that sentiment. So have a good 2018. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
We'll see you on the other side. Kahnawake.